Picture this. A rest stop on the Dempster Highway in the Yukon, kilometer 592. The nearest town is Inuvik, 87 kilometers north. The last gas station was 180 kilometers behind you. There is no cell signal. There hasn't been one for 4 hours. It's 1:47 in the morning. Minus 51 degrees Celsius. One truck is parked in the gravel clearing. A Kenworth W990 with a 53-foot flatbed covered in frost so thick you can't read the company name on the door. Engine off. No lights. Inside that truck is a woman. She is 34 years old. She has been driving this highway for 9 years, and she is parked alone in one of the most isolated stretches of road on the North American continent. Now here's what most people assume when they picture this. They picture fear, vulnerability, someone with no other choice. That assumption is wrong in every way that matters. What's actually happening inside that cab right now, at 51 degrees CC? No engine running, no town within reach, nobody else for 40 kilometers in any direction, is not what you'd expect. And by the end of this video, you'll understand something about women who drive Canada's remote routes that almost nobody outside the industry ever gets to know. 3 things. The first is why she's out there alone. The second is what keeps her alive when the cold outside would kill an unprotected person in under an hour. And the third will completely change how you think about every woman you see behind the wheel of a semi. Let's start at the beginning. The first question everyone asks is, why alone? The answer has nothing to do with circumstance. It has everything to do with choice. Women make up approximately 4% of long-haul truck drivers in Canada. On the northern routes, the Dempster, the Alaska Highway, the roads above the 60th parallel, that number is smaller still. On any given night on the Dempster in January, the odds of another truck parked within radio range are not high. She knows this. She planned for it. The Dempster is unpaved for most of its 736 kilometers. In winter it narrows. You run your hours of service, you manage your fuel, and you park when the regulations say you park, not when it's convenient, not when there's company nearby. Her driving day ends at kilometer 592, so that's where she stops. Stopping on the Dempster is nothing like stopping on the Trans-Canada. No fuel island, no diner, no other driver to knock on your door if something goes wrong. The infrastructure most Canadians take for granted simply doesn't exist up here. And the legal reality is the same as everywhere else in Canada. She is carrying 16,400 kilograms of industrial equipment for a mining operation outside Inuvik. Under Transport Canada regulations and her freight contract, she is personally responsible for that cargo every minute of the trip. The trailer cannot be left unattended. There is no room to find, no colleague within range. There is only the truck, the cargo, the highway, and the Yukon night. But here's the part that changes everything. Even if she could leave, even if the cargo didn't matter, even if a warm room appeared 50 meters across the gravel, she wouldn't go. And the reason starts with something most people never think about. At 51 Odyssey, a metal cab with no active heating reaches outside temperature in under 40 minutes. Steel conducts heat 400 times faster than wood. Leave it unheated at 51 degrees Celsius, and you are no longer dealing with a cold vehicle. You are dealing with a metal box that will kill anything warm that enters it. So the answer seems obvious. Leave the engine running. Except on the Dempster, that answer is more complicated than anywhere else. Running a truck engine at idle burns between 3.5 and 5 liters of diesel per hour. 10 hours parked, up to 50 liters consumed. On the Dempster, the nearest fuel from kilometer 592 is the Eagle Plains Hotel, 180 kilometers south. There is no second option. Running the engine all night doesn't just cost money. It costs fuel she may need to reach the next stop. For a driver on the Dempster, fuel management is not a preference, it is survival arithmetic. So she doesn't idle, she shuts the engine down, completely, deliberately, and she stays warm using something that most people who have never driven a northern route have never heard of. Mounted to the frame of her Kenworth between the fuel tank and the rear cab mount is a device about the size of a large toolbox, its own fuel line tapped directly into the diesel tank, its own ignition system, its own thermostat, a thin exhaust pipe barely wider than a thumb, producing a thread of vapor that disappears in 20 centimeters of 51 degrees Celsius air. It consumes less than 0.4 liters of diesel per hour. It holds the cab at 21 degrees Celsius when it is 51 outside. It's called a diesel bunk heater. Her unit is a Webasto Airtop 2000 STC, the same technology originally developed for military vehicles in Arctic conditions. She services it herself every September. She knows its hum the way a musician knows their instrument. But the bunk heater is only part of the system. Her truck also carries an APU, an auxiliary power unit, a second independent engine on the frame, with its own fuel supply and electrical output. It runs her refrigerator, her microwave, her charging ports, her lights, all of it simultaneously at 51 km on a gravel highway, 87 kilometers from the nearest town. Inside her cab right now at 1:47 in the morning, while the world outside is cold enough to kill, there is a phone charging, a refrigerator running, a dim reading light above the bunk, a thermos of tea still warm. She is not surviving the Dempster tonight. She is sleeping in it. But there is a question experienced drivers think about that civilians never do. What happens when it fails? 2:20 in the morning, kilometer 592, temperature outside, 50°. She wakes up, not to an alarm, to cold air against her face, the kind of cold the body registers before the mind catches up. She checks the heater panel, dark. She checks the APU, also dead. She knows exactly how much time she has. A metal cab at 51 degrees Celsius loses approximately 1 degree Celsius per minute with no active heating. 20 minutes before it becomes seriously dangerous. 35 before it becomes a medical emergency. She does not panic. She reaches under the bunk and pulls out an orange Pelican case. Packed since October. Inside a Garmin InReach satellite communicator. There is no cell signal on the Dempster, and she knew that before she left Whitehorse. A 40°C sleeping bag, chemical hand warmers, a headlamp, a spare balaclava. She puts on the sleeping bag over her clothes, activates 2 hand warmers at her core, powers on the Garmin, and sends a non-emergency check-in to her dispatch in Whitehorse. Then she diagnoses the system. A tripped circuit breaker. She resets it. Both systems restart in 90 seconds. Total time from waking to resolution, 7 minutes. She knew what to do because she had prepared for it weeks before the temperature dropped. Professional drivers on the Dempster prepare for winter, the way surgeons prepare for a procedure. Every item on the checklist exists because someone once learned its absence the hard way. The first is the fuel. At 22°C, diesel begins to gel, wax crystals forming in the lines, shutting down the heater and APU at the exact moment they're needed most. She uses anti-gel additive, 2 bottles per fill, starting in October. Above the 60th parallel, Yukon fuel is already Arctic blended. She treats it anyway. On the Dempster, that's not paranoia. It's professional judgment. The second is the batteries. At 40°C, a standard truck battery delivers less than 35% of its rated capacity. Her truck runs 8 batteries, double the standard configuration, to power the APU, heater, communications, and GPS through a full northern night. She load tests all 8 in September. Any battery showing degraded capacity is replaced before the first cold run. The third is communication, and this one is specific to the north. On the Trans-Canada, cell signal is mostly continuous. On the Dempster, it doesn't exist for most of the highway. She carries the Garmin InReach satellite communicator. Iridium network, works anywhere on Earth, $65 a month. Her dispatch in Whitehorse has her GPS coordinates every 10 minutes through the night. If she misses 2 check-ins, they have a protocol. It has never been activated. The fourth item costs $50 and changes everything. Thermal insulated curtains between the bunk and the cab. They reduce heat loss by up to 60%. On a 51°C night, the heater runs for 5 hours instead of 9. The fuel lasts. The system never works at the edge of its capacity. She installed them herself on a Sunday afternoon in October. Here is what nobody who has never driven the Dempster in January expects to hear. Ask her whether she'd rather be somewhere else tonight. She thinks about it for a moment. Not because the answer is complicated, but because she's deciding how to explain something that doesn't translate easily into words. Then she says no. At 51°C on the Dempster Highway, the silence is unlike anything that exists in the inhabited world. Not the silence of a quiet room, the silence of a place where sound itself struggles to travel through frozen air. No traffic, no voices, no wind on the nights when the cold is complete and the air stops moving entirely, just the low, steady pulse of the bunk heater. And above the truck, through the small window above the bunk, a sky so dark and so clear that the Milky Way is not a suggestion. It is a structure, arching from one mountain ridge to the other. She has seen it from kilometer 592 dozens of times. It never looks the same twice. There is something specific about being a woman alone in that environment that she has tried to describe and mostly given up on. It is not bravado. It is not the performance of toughness. It is quieter than that. It is the knowledge that the machine around her is doing exactly what it was built to do. that the preparation she completed in October is paying precisely the dividend it was supposed to pay, that the Garmin has her coordinates, the dispatch has the protocol, the sleeping bag is rated to 40 degrees, and the hand warmers are exactly where she put them. Competence at 51 degrees is not abstract. It is not a performance review. It is the difference between a cold night and a dangerous one. Most nights on the Dempster, for a driver who has done the work, it is just a cold night. A cold, completely silent, impossibly beautiful night. The next time you see a semi parked alone on a remote Canadian highway, no lights, no engine, nobody for kilometers in any direction, don't picture someone trapped. Don't picture desperation. Picture someone who chose to be exactly there, warm, prepared, and sleeping in one of the most extraordinary places in this country. Now I want to hear from you. If you're a woman driving long haul in Canada, any route, any season, drop a comment. Tell me your road and your coldest night. The Dempster, the Coquihalla, the Trans-Canada through Manitoba in February. Tell me the temperature and what got you through it. I read every single one. And if you're watching from somewhere warm right now, your house, your apartment, a Tim Hortons, tell me what province you're in and what the temperature is outside tonight. People are watching this from Whitehorse, from Yellowknife, from places where 40 degrees is just a Tuesday. I want to know where this reaches. One more thing. This channel tells the stories that happen on Canadian roads that most people never hear. The real ones. The ones that happen at 2 in the morning at kilometer 592 of a gravel highway in the Yukon while everyone else is asleep. If that's the kind of story you want to keep hearing, subscribe. It costs nothing. And it means the next one gets made. I'll see you down the road.